far it's just us. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our coffee shop webinar for today, setting yourself up for success in the new year. We're very happy to have you with us for our first coffee shop webinar of the year, first of webinars that we're likely going to be doing every single month as part of our educational series for nonprofits. If you could just do a quick wave or shout out into the chat to let us know that you can hear us. We just want to make sure that we can hear everybody. All right, thank you so much for that. We don't want to get 20 minutes into the webinar and think that nobody can hear us, so thank you. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started and everybody gets logging on today. Our .org Cafe professional development series is a whole bunch of different things that we put together here at .org to be able to help you as nonprofit organizations be able to do your job better and have access to some free education. And so one of the things we do are these coffee shop webinars on a monthly basis. In addition to our weekly blogs that we push out, we're very active on both LinkedIn and on Facebook. So if you want to follow us on those, we're always pushing out a bunch of really great information that could be helpful to you. We also have our monthly .org coffee shop newsletter, which is just things that you can read and click through in the time it takes you to have your first cup of coffee, tea, Diet Coke, whatever it is that you choose to drink to wake you up in the morning. The idea behind these webinars is for them to be very informative but relatable to you. And our webinar format, for those of you who have attended our webinars before, might be a little bit different today. In the past, we have had panelists that have joined us as part of our webinar series. And those panelists have been experts in various nonprofit areas, vendors that we've worked with, people who actually work in the nonprofit sector. But this time we were getting a lot of feedback from people that they really just felt like they needed to set themselves up for the new year and what did that look like. And we thought it was a great opportunity for us to share our expertise and be able to talk to you about just some things that you can do over the, over the year to just make sure that you have a successful year. So, so this webinar is going to look a little different for those of you who are expecting a panelist Q&A format. I will say though that we still want to encourage questions as part of the webinar, and the chat box and the Q&A will both be enabled. So please feel free to ask questions during the webinar today. We're really going to make sure that we have this done within an hour. So we want to be respectful of your time, but also give you as much content as you can get in that allotted time. We're going to leave about 5 to 10 minutes also at the end of the webinar so that you can ask questions at the end. And again, feel free to ask those. We are not going to name names. So if you're a little anxious about having your name called out as the one asking the question, don't worry, we're not going to be asking your name as part of the or when we're asking the question, answering the question. So again, we love questions. We want you to stop us and ask them when you're ready. So, so just a quick introduction. My name is Amy Wong. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the president and founder of .org Solutions. And I started .org in 2009, so we're coming up on 12 years here. But before that, I was in the nonprofit sector in a variety of positions for a variety of organizations over a 17-year career. I'm a frequent blogger on things leadership, nonprofit, planning, strategy, and a graduate of Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, where I'm actually a very active advocate and also spend a lot of time advocating on behalf of small businesses on Capitol Hill. Also, I do a lot of speaking engagements on marketing, fundraising, and leadership. I really get excited when I talk about topics like we're going to talk about today. And again, I hope you get a lot out of what we're talking about today. Really, the way I look at success when we're talking about being successful through the new year, it's hard to define what success is because success means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. My goal today is just to share some things with you that I've learned over the years, things in my own success and my own failures that are really going to, I think, really kind of maybe hit home with a lot of you. I could really spend hours, days, weeks, months talking about this, but I'll do what I can to encapsulate that into 45 minutes today. Again, I encourage chat and asking questions along the way. So I don't know how many of you understand what these dates are or why they may look familiar. And February 14th, though, that is Valentine's Day. That's actually not the date that I'm going for. So January 12th, for those of you who are familiar with setting New Year's resolutions or losing your New Year's resolutions or just kind of throwing them out the window altogether, January 12th is actually known as National Quitters Day for those making New Year's resolutions. So this is what we're talking about today. Is not about things that are going to, we're not going to talk about losing weight. We're not going to talk about doing anything that you want to do in a major change in a short period of time. We're going to be talking about sustainable things. And February 14th is another key milestone for those who have made resolutions, because 80% of you who have made resolutions at the beginning of the new year will probably have already thrown those out the window by that point. So about 2 weeks into February, about 80% of people who have made New Year's resolutions no longer are doing anything to keep those New Year's resolutions. So again, really talking today about sustainable ideas and practices that you can put into place. I'm also going to share with you some of my favorite books on leadership and planning, so that maybe you can get a little bit more insight into some of these topics that we're talking about today. So talking about really what we're going to go over today in terms of our learning objectives, we're going to talk about tips for successful planning, implementing those plans, because I think a lot of times we all make really good plans, but sometimes we have some challenges implementing them. A regular review of both your fundraising and marketing efforts and the importance behind that. How to become a better leader. And my feeling is that it doesn't matter if you are a brand new person into your organization or a recent graduate or someone who has been working for decades. Everyone has chances to become leaders, to be leaders, and to become better as leaders. And then also, even though I said we were going to not talk about weight loss goals and exercise goals and things like that for the year, I do want to talk about taking better care of yourself and how to take care of yourself. This is something that personally has been something I've really been trying to focus on over the last 6 to 8 months during COVID. And I just wanted to share some things with you that I thought you may find helpful as well. So what are some tips for successful planning? As you'll find, I really love a lot of quotes, and this quote from Yogi Berra is probably pretty well known to a lot of people, but I feel that this is so important when we're talking about planning. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. And I find that to be especially true when we're talking about the nonprofit sector, because nonprofits in general are operating often with very small budgets. They're operating with small staffs. They're operating with people that are doing 10 jobs just in their one job. And so sometimes it's very difficult to understand which direction it is that you're going. But just by having some good solid plans in place, it's going to really help you understand where you're going so that you end up exactly where you want to be. The way I look at planning, and this has actually come out of a lot of different conversations is over the last several months, is no one has a crystal ball. And if you are putting off any kind of planning, whether that's strategic or long range planning, or even some of your annual plans, don't put it off just because of COVID. If you really look at anything in our lives, and for those of you who are on our resilience webinar in the fall with Anjua Maximo, one of the things that she talked about that was really great was that nobody ever knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody ever really knows what's going to happen an hour from now. And so we have to approach things like COVID in the same sort of way, is that we have to make decisions and we have to make plans based upon the information that we have available to us at this time. And so as we're going through COVID, and we're hopefully starting to see ourselves emerge out of COVID, we really need to start thinking about what kind of plans do we have, what kind of plans do we need, and what kind of plans do we just need to kind of really start thinking about having and developing. So to start that, it's good to understand the types of plans that you need. And so I try to break it down into 3 kind of general types of plans. So your long range plan is really the vision for your organization. So this is where you really aspire to be as an organization in 5 to 10 years or even longer than that. And those are kind of your, I really wish if there were no obstacles. This is something that we think we're going to be able to do. Your strategic plans are generally 2 to 3 years in scope. And those strategic plans are meant to support your long range vision. And for those of you who are saying, oh, now's not the time to do strategic planning, I'm saying now is absolutely the time for strategic planning. I just wrote a blog on why now is the time for doing strategic planning. And I think that's because so many organizations right now are having to think strategically because they've had to do things differently because of COVID. And so you're in that strategic mindset, and that now is the time. Your annual plans actually support your strategic plans. So your annual plans are the things that you need to do every year in order to just kind of keep your organization going. In those annual plans are also your components of your strategic plan that you want to get done. And also they have a little bit more, I think they're a little more granular and involve a lot more people within the organization in terms of accomplishing those particular plans. I also think it's important to get buy-in and involve your team. And I understand that some organizations have very large teams. You have a lot of employees, especially now that is a little bit difficult because a lot of people are doing like what we're doing right now. You're on Zoom, and it's very difficult to really get everybody together. But it's really important when you're doing plans, especially your strategic plans and your annual plans, to get the buy-in of your team. Long-range plans probably a little bit more difficult because a lot of people don't really understand our vision, right? They don't understand that vision. And so, but getting them involved in the strategy of making that vision become a reality and understanding on how to do that in an annual basis is important. I think it's also important right now to get your team involved in any way that you can in your planning, because people are feeling like they need direction and they need leadership. And so in order to do that, you want to make sure that they're aware of what's going on with those plans. I'd also say be flexible. And I would say this whether we're talking about planning during a pandemic or anytime. I think anytime that we're creating plans, we're planning again with the information that we know. And if things don't go the way that we really map them out to be, we have to be ready to be flexible and make changes when that time comes. And then also make it an ongoing process. And I'm going to talk about here a little bit about why it is so important to have that particular process in place and why that's really going to be a critical part of any kind of implementation. So let's talk now about implementing your plans. So I love this quote from Gandhi. It's like, have a bias toward action. Let's see something happen now. You can break that big plan into small steps and take the first step right away. Wow. So I think, I believe that in order to have, it's not shared screen. Hold on, I'm having a technical problem here. I apologize. Okay, sorry about that. So now you can see what I'm seeing. So in order to implement your plans, it is really important to be able to put them into different pieces, parts that you can see. So the way I look at this is that when I'm thinking about implementing a plan, is I look at accountability and action, give you the traction. And so having a plan is not enough. And so in order to have a plan that's successful, it's making sure that you have plans to put them into action. So here at .org, one of the things that we do is we actually have our annual goals. We have our long range goals on an 11 by 17 sheet of paper. And we know that they're right in front of us. We talk about that often, and we really have a good visibility and plan for that. We also decide that we're going to break those goals down and objectives by quarter. And I think most of us, when we're starting our annual plans, is we do this really great plan in December, we shore it up in January, everybody agrees upon it, and then we either put it on a shelf or we talk about it a couple months later, or we say, oh, everything is going to be done in the first quarter or the last quarter, and then everybody starts to panic and things don't get done. What's really important when you're doing these annual plans is to break them down by quarter. And so the way our team here at .org does it, and we encourage a lot of our clients to do the same thing, is figure out what objectives are really important as part of your plan. What are the things that you want to get done in the next 90 days? Because humans actually work a lot better that way. We think better in 3-month increments. And so when we're able to look at those plans on a regular basis, we're more likely to get them done. We started implementing the 90-day goal setting 2 years ago, and we have exponentially improved our productivity over the last couple of years. So there's some really good ways to do that. And I do have a book I'll share with you later on a really great method to be able to do that. Also, our quarterly goals and our objectives are actually on our staff meeting agenda. So it is a topic of discussion that we talk about every single week. So if you're trying to make sure that you keep those goals in front of you, I know right now it is hard to have something that's printed and put up in front of everybody's desk because many of us are working at home. But one thing you can do is put it on your staff meeting agenda and make it part of the things that you talk about every single time. Hold quarterly planning meetings to stay on task and set quarterly goals. So we use our quarterly meetings for a couple of different things. The first thing that we do is we actually celebrate. We look at what we did over the last quarter and we celebrate those successes. And I have so many conversations with nonprofits who, because your staffs are small and there are so many things that are going on all the time, that I ask, like, well, what do you do to celebrate your successes? They're like, gosh, we don't think about that. You know, you celebrate your donors, you might celebrate a birthday, you might, celebrate somebody getting married or having a baby or something like that. But do you really celebrate like the really great work you do to serve others, the successes that you have made to, raise the money that you wanted to raise, to pivot your special event from something that it was to what it became during the pandemic. So we actually take time to do little things. So because our team is small, we could probably be a little bit more, not now, but a little bit more creative in what we did. But we went one day and we visited a pumpkin patch. One day we actually just did a really nice lunch out. So there's different things that we've done to be able to celebrate those successes. But that's the first thing we do in those quarterly meetings. Then we spend the next couple of hours and we talk about what do we want to accomplish in the next 90 days. And that process is very, very helpful. And again, that helps you go back to that planning thing that I talked about before about getting your team involved, because your team is the one that needs to help you make those things happen. One thing we've also learned over time, and I think we continue to get better at this, and I again see this a lot with organizations, if everyone owns it, no one owns it. So if you do have objectives or if you do have tasks that need to be done, 3 people can't be responsible for the task, because if one person owns it or 3 people own it, no one owns it. Very important to set up your accountability structure for goals and objectives with a lead person for each one of those goals or objectives and team members that are there to support it. Why that works is that there's one person that's responsible for driving the meetings, the process, the organization, and then also that person has the opportunity to delegate other tasks within that tasks. So that way, if things do if things are successful, you can reward the people who are part of that success. If things did not go quite the way you planned, you're able to identify what that accountability structure is. And I guess I skipped to this first. I apologize for that, but I will say again, celebrate. Again, you all work very, very hard. And if you're spending all this time putting your effort into your goals, you got to make sure you celebrate those as well. So I want to talk next about the importance of regularly reviewing your marketing and fundraising efforts. And I think because, we think about the stuff is there, it's done, and we're not going to go back and look at it. I think that's kind of human nature. But, you know, as Leonard Bernstein said, to achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time. And we as nonprofit employees or people that work in the nonprofit space or with nonprofits understand that none of us ever seems to have quite enough time. But time is one of those things that you manage what you can, and you delegate the rest. As I said, when we're talking about reviewing your fundraising and marketing efforts, I think what happens sometimes is we complete something, and when it's done, it's done. So we create our websites, and thank goodness that huge, massive project, it's done, so it's done, and we don't think about it again. You finish that fundraising plan, it's done, you don't think about it again. You finish this particular process, it's done, you don't think about it again. So I still believe that just because it's done doesn't mean it's done. So every time you have to look at those things, make sure that they're working and make changes as needed and keep things fresh. That's especially important because today people are really distracted, and you need to keep new and exciting things in front of them that they can actually enjoy. So a couple of things that I think are important for you to review is really, some of the things are your numbers. So really understanding what your social media, e-newsletter metrics and your website metrics mean. And your social media metrics could mean a whole lot of things. They can tell you, do you have the same people that like and share all the time? Do you have a variety of people that are engaging in certain things? What kind of things are people engaging in? What are they not engaging in? I think especially with social media, we don't really dive deep into things beyond likes and shares. It's really important to understand what people are liking and what people are sharing. So maybe you find that a lot of the things that you think are doing really, really well are only liked by the same 3 people. Whereas some of the other things that you do a little more infrequently are liked and shared by 10 times that. So look at what's working and what's not working and change accordingly. Same with your e-newsletters. This is something that I think a lot of us don't look at in terms of our data is, what is it that people are clicking on? What is it that people aren't clicking on when they get our e-newsletters? What kind of information are people looking for? It's not just a matter of, how many people are following us. You have to look at how many people aren't engaging at all in what you're doing. Right now, I know that a lot of you are paying per person that you have in your email newsletter list. Is it time to start looking at some of those numbers and thinking, if people aren't engaging, why? And then also your website too. We look at websites a little differently than I think they used to be. We look at websites tend to be a little bit more static information that people can go and learn about your organization. But make sure you're really just taking a look at it and seeing, like, where are people coming to your website? Where are they leaving your website? You don't have to be a super Google Analytics expert in order to understand how people are navigating their way through your website. Are they getting lost? And do you need to, maybe make some better paths for them to convert and become either donors or clients of your organization? We suggest, actually, in terms of your website, doing that review quarterly. That's really important to look for irrelevant or outdated content. I think, again, if you're doing things like events, or if you have seminars, or if you have webinars, or if you have any of those kinds of things that are going on regularly, make sure that, you don't have something on there from a year ago that people are trying to find. That actually does a lot to your SEO negatively, and you don't want to do that. So just even schedule a quarterly review of every single page on your website to see if there's anything you need to update. Review your communications to see if they reflect the behaviors of your audiences. I think because so many of us are tasked with having, again, maybe a couple different jobs underneath under our job description, it's a little difficult to try to identify who our audiences are. But when you're reviewing your fundraising and marketing, it's important to understand, like, who your audiences are and who is getting what. So you may not want to be sending information on really complex giving instruments to a millennial who's just out of school who's engaging with you. They may be looking for something more along the lines of monthly giving. So, take a look at what your communications are and who they're going to. One size does not fit all. Now is a good time also to review your timelines for all of your appeals, events, et cetera, to see if they're relevant. And I would especially say this with events, because I know events probably for the next 6 to 8 months will continue to look differently. But look and see, now that we know that the U.S. Postal Service is taking a longer time to deliver mail, do we have to retweak our timelines for any kind of spring appeal that we're planning on sending out? Do we plan on moving, our indoor event to a hybrid type event? And what does that look like? Do we need to, talk to a venue much farther out in order to be able to schedule that normally than what we normally would, because there's going to be competition from others? Or can we keep that the same? So, make sure you're reviewing those timelines for everything that you do to make sure that they still are working the way you want them to. And then this one is a tough one because I think data gets very overwhelming, and especially for organizations whose databases may not have stayed clean over time. But try to schedule regular maintenance to your database, whether that's to purge contacts that are no longer relevant to your organization, or maybe running it through the national change of address to making sure you have updated addresses for people. If you're running a database, your donor database separate from your email database, and you're getting bounce backs from your email, make sure those emails are up to date quarterly. Because if you're able to maintain things over time, whether it's monthly or quarterly, you're going to have a much cleaner database over time. You're going to be paying for less contacts than you probably need to. And that your data is going to save you a lot more time in the long run too, so that when you run lists or you're uploading information into your into any of the files that you're using for your marketing or fundraising, you're going to be able to spend less time having to manually go back and fix all of that. Oops, sorry. Apologize for that. Is my screen up? On the right side. It's on the right side? Oh, I'm sorry, I keep having screen sharing, folks. This is a little frustrating today. It doesn't want me to share my screen. Okay, I apologize for that. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is being a better leader. And so leadership is really one of those things that I really think about, like what John Maxwell is saying. It's not about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It's really about how do we influence others in others' lives. And so again, leadership comes at all levels of the organization. It can be somebody who is entry-level person, or it can be the most senior person on staff, or it could be somebody that's in between. We all have really great opportunities to learn and to grow. I believe that leadership is about more than being in charge. And the way I look at this is that most people want to be led. They really crave structure, and they want to like where they work. I look back over my career and I think about what I really enjoyed about the jobs that I really enjoyed. And one of them was really about understanding what my role was. It was feeling like when I came to work that I enjoyed the people I was with and the environment that I was in, and that I really understood, what opportunities were for me to grow. And so that's really your job as a leader. And it is a little bit different right now because of the way the workplace is. But I do think that in the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to be seeing things look a little bit differently. So really, what are some of the other roles of being a leader? And so creating and executing vision is really, I think, one of the most important things for many of us who are on the call today. I know that we have a very diverse group. We have people that are CEOs. We have people that are high up in executive positions. We also, I know, have some people on the call who are in other roles. But, really I'm speaking a little bit to the CEOs in this, but for those who aspire to be on the executive teams, creating and executing the vision is a big part of being a leader. Culture, gosh, I cannot say enough about culture. It's interesting, we have a new person who's going to be joining our team next week, and we're very excited about that. But I was really surprised through the interview process how many of the people that we interviewed, and these are all junior people, asked about our culture. I think that that's something that's really important to especially the up and coming young people who are joining teams, is they really want to work in a place where they feel valued, that they feel supported, that not only is a great place to work, but does really great things, and it supports the people that work for them. So your job as a leader is to really create and model a positive culture. And that can come in a lot of different ways. And the way I look at culture is, if you as a leader don't create the culture will create itself for you. And often that is not a culture that you want within your organization. For anyone who has hiring responsibilities, I look at hire well and fire when needed. It sounds cruel, but there are just times when those are steps that need to happen. And it oftentimes, when someone does have to be let go, it's best for both the organization and for that person. So unfortunately, it's not something any of us want to do, but being able to hire well and fire when needed is very important. Develop yourself and your workforce. So I see a lot of times where organizations will have just the leadership teams or executive teams have opportunities for professional development. And I believe that everyone at every level should have some sort of opportunities for professional development. I know the challenge with that is there's so many webinars like the one we're on now. I can't tell you how many different webinar requests and emails I get every single day. I could probably be living on webinars for the next 2 years and not get any work done. So I understand why it's important not to have people specifically doing webinars and things like that all the time. So create a plan and actually sit down when you're doing your reviews with your team members and talk to them. Like, what is it that you want to learn, and how does what you want to learn and what I'd like you to do as part of your job help us meet our organizational goals, and create professional development plans for yourself and your workforce. That could be something as simple as maybe taking a simple course. It could be going out and buying a book. It could be all sorts of different things. It could be a conference when we get to those again in person. So make sure that each person has an understanding of what professional development means to them and how it ties into your organization. This one I have in caps because it is one of the most important things, I think, and one of the most egregious things that a lot of organizations do is they run terrible meetings. We really believe that so much does not get accomplished because of bad meetings, the way the meetings are structured. We also think that there are a lot of opportunities to make a lot of meetings shorter. So anytime you go into any kind of meeting, you should have an expectation of what you want to accomplish in the meeting. You want to make sure you have an agenda for the meeting. You want to make sure you have a start and stop time for that particular meeting, and you have the right people in the meeting. Especially when it comes to staff meetings. I think this is one where I see so much of a challenge, and I think a lot of people, because they want to try to have everyone feel as though they're a part of the meeting, they want everybody to speak about what they're doing. And a lot of times just hearing what people are doing doesn't make sense for a meeting. So, if people are talking in a meeting, there should be something relevant that they're talking about. So if it's your staff meeting, maybe you're talking about, okay, these are 10 administrative items that we need to go over today. What are some issues that we need to deal with and bring front and center? Are there particular programs or clients or things that we need to talk about? And everybody submits meeting agenda items ahead of time. The meeting starts on time and the meeting ends on time. And so you're using people's time, you're using your time to the best of the ability. So lots of good things on running good meetings. Again, I'll share some things with you at the end, but if you can do anything as a leader, run better meetings. Communicate. So this next one is really about communication. I think a lot of times we assume that people understand what we want them to do, but that doesn't always make sense. So don't expect people to know what you want if you don't tell them. Sometimes you have to actually tell them what you're asking for. So the clearer you are and the better that you communicate, the less chance there is that there's going to be a confusion about what someone is understanding of your expectations. But with that, don't micromanage. So I think that there's that fine line between telling somebody what you want them to do and actually doing it for them or standing over them, which runs into the next bullet of let people do it their way sometimes. This was really an aha moment for me when I learned what this meant. I tend to be, for those on this call who know me and I know my team, is I have a tendency to be I understand what the process is in my brain. I tend to be kind of rigid on some things. And so it's like there's kind of a way to do it. But what I learned is that not everybody thinks the way I think. And your team doesn't think like you do. Just because their way of doing something is different doesn't mean it's wrong. So if you give people latitude, once you give them an expectation to kind of do it their way, sometimes you're going to learn that the way they do it is better than the way you do. So give them a little latitude. I mean, obviously, if something is wrong, very different situation. But if the end result comes out the way that it needs to come out, the path for somebody to get there can be different, and that's okay. And then I would say also too, one of the last things about leadership I want to talk about today is making sure that you review your policies to ensure they align with changes due to COVID. So many organizations are starting to look at what does back to work look like. Some are back full time, some are still fully remote, some are in a blended model. But the questions are going to start to come up of, am I going to be able to work remotely anymore? What kind of flexibility am I going to have? Do you need to have different policies in terms of, cleaning protocols? Do you need to, have different policies about sharing desk space, about conference room space, things like that. So make sure you're taking this time right now to review your policies to see if for any reason you need to either add policies. I know one that we're looking at is a remote work policy. What does that mean? And just to see if there's anything that you need to add or change. So one of the last things I want to talk about is taking care of yourself. And Diane von Furstenberg, for those of you who don't know, she's a fashion designer. But I love this because she talks about how important it is for you to take time for yourself and find clarity.
Slide.
I apologize. My slides keep coming off. Did that go back on?
No.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So my thing for January about taking care of myself is not letting Zoom and all of this other technology make me go crazy. So some of it is laughing at yourself and just making sure that you don't take yourself too seriously. But anyway, back to Diane von Furstenberg. Really the most important relationship is the one you have with yourself. So in this case, I could probably have just really panicked and decided not to, or to be freaked out about the slide, but I'm just gonna move on. So in terms of taking care of yourself, so I look at this as putting yourself first isn't selfish. And I would say in my decades of life, I probably only realized this a couple of years ago, because when you do take care of yourself, you have more energy and space to give to others. So as you're thinking about setting yourself up for the new year, take that vacation, or at least schedule some time off for yourself. That vacation may not be the dream vacation that you had planned. That vacation may only be, taking time off to just not work and not be in front of a screen. But try to schedule that time off. We all have it available to us. And I think because we're homebound or we're, really restricted in what we're able to do, we don't feel that we deserve to have vacation, schedule it and take that time off. If you can't actually just take full time off for whatever reason, schedule something to look forward to. Maybe you feel comfortable enough going to, get a manicure, or maybe you want to go skiing, or maybe you want to just go take a drive somewhere. Schedule something to look forward to. That really can do a lot for your mental health as well as your physical health. And also too, I think whenever we're going to go away or go on vacation, I don't know about you, but for me, I get a heck of a lot more done with that week leading up to it, so that I know I'm prepared to be able to go. Step away from your home office. Not everyone has the luxury of having a separate home office space. And I don't think any of us, when we went into COVID lockdown in March, thought we would still be working remotely in January. So there are many people who still probably are working at their dining room table, or in an extra bedroom, or at a cramped space. Make sure that you just try to block some time off to get away from the office, so you're not looking at it, so you're not living in it, and so you're not there. Because if you are constantly seeing your office in front of you, you're going to constantly work, and there's going to be a point where you're not going to get as much done. Break up your routine a little bit. I think all of us, again, during this, like, get up, get your coffee, go to the office, come up for lunch, go back to the office, come up for dinner, go to bed. Maybe take a break, maybe get up and go for a walk in the morning, or try to do something different, or any way that you can break up your routine. I know for me right now, I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to go a little crazy. I feel like there's so much routine that it's really getting boring, and I need to kind of mix things up. So I've been trying to come into the office maybe once or twice a week to break it up when nobody's here. So if there's anything you can do to break up your routine, try that. Maybe even try to have a different breakfast or something different for lunch than you normally would have. Schedule regular thinking blocks. So this one for me, I think is something that I've always found huge value in. And for probably the last 8 years, I have Monday mornings, Monday actually until about 1 o'clock is completely off limits. I don't schedule meetings. I don't schedule phone calls. I rarely answer emails. And I use that as time to think, and time to actually do planning, and time to do just things that allow me to have some space. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a Monday morning. That's really hard for some people, but maybe it's a Thursday afternoon, or it's a Friday morning, or it's a block of time. But people say, well, I can't do that. My schedule's too full. I thought that was going to be the case too, but I actually made that something that I told people. It's like, Monday mornings are non-negotiable. Unless there's an emergency, I don't do a Monday morning meeting or Monday morning call. So, think about how you could block time where you can just think, whether it's to, go over your strategic plan, whether it's to write an appeal letter, whether it's to, review those web pages that you want to do on a quarterly basis, whether it's even to just redo your to-do list in order to feel like you're a little bit more in control. Having those regular thinking blocks scheduled into your week will become a habit and something that people know are part of your regular routine. Protect your calendar. So I'm terrible at this, so I put this in here, I think, as a reminder to me as much as anything else. I think we have a tendency to see open blocks in our calendar, and we inherently fill them. Again, going back to the whole schedule, regular thinking blocks and working blocks, having your calendar protected where you're not having somebody just constantly putting things on it for you, or you're leaving open things to yourself, is a great way for you to start putting other blocks of time in. I think there's I don't know the actual stat, but if you're distracted from something that you're specifically either working on or thinking about, it takes 10 to 15 minutes to get back on track with that thought process. So if you only have 15 minutes in between meetings all day long, or calls or visits or anything like that with donors, it's very hard for you to actually process information in between those meetings. So even if it's extending a little bit of time between your meetings, so you're not going back to back to back, it gives you time to kind of process what just happened and also formulate plans going forward. And then prioritizing tasks. You know, I think we're the only ones that can prioritize our time. Even though we think other people prioritize our time. I made a very simple little list for myself, and something that I thought worked really, really well was to actually take my to-do list and assign them a 1, 2, or 3. And 1s are things that I know I need to get done this week. A 2 is something that I need to get done in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And a 3 is something that I don't have to have done for at least a month or maybe 3 months. And then things make their way up the list. And so it actually has been great. I've accomplished more over the last couple of months in doing that. Your prioritization doesn't have to be the same as mine, but it's a way to actually take those monster lists and put them into some sort of organization that you can get a lot more done. So as we're starting to wrap up here, I'm going to review a couple other things, and I think my screen just went weird again. Did it just go again?
Yes.
Okay, let's try this again. All right. Let's see. I apologize for this again. So let's just review what we went over today. So I want to say that, you know, no one has a crystal ball. So as we're looking at planning for the coming year, you're not going to be able to say what's going to happen in 6 months. So when you're doing that planning, you know, make sure that you know that no one is going to be able to see the future. So plan with contingency plans in mind, plan with your vision, plan with, you know, just being strong and where you want to be. Accountability and action give you traction. And so if you have tasks and goals and objectives that need to be done, if you have an accountability structure where people understand what their role is and what they're supposed to be doing, there's action being taken, you're going to see a lot of movement on your goals. Just because it's done doesn't mean it's done. So this referred to our marketing and fundraising review. So just because you have your marketing materials done or your website's done or you have a process for your social media and you have, you know, planned things like that, it doesn't mean it's done. Review it on a regular basis and understand that things do change over time and you've got to constantly keep on top of it. Leadership is more than just about being in charge. So think of all the things that you can do to improve your leadership skills, whether that's running a better meeting or working on what the culture is like within your organization. Now's a really great time to do that and ask for feedback from your people because they will tell you. And then putting yourself first isn't selfish. As I said, I continue to be a work in progress on this. But, you know, being able to do some things for yourself actually makes you better for others. So anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take those at this point. And go ahead and put those either in the Q&A or the chat box. But as you're thinking of what some of those questions might be, I do want to put up some of my must-read books for leaders, and I'll talk about these in case you have any questions. The first one is Traction and Get a Grip on Your Business by Gino Wickman. So a lot of the references that I have to our 90-day goal and objective setting, that is something that we got from Traction. Great book, not just for business, nonprofits too. Also in Traction has some really great ideas and ways to run better meetings. Those can be very helpful. Some of the things that we also took from Traction are the 90-day, the full size goal and objective and vision. So that book is a really great book for anyone who's just really interested on some good ways to get your team together and really action and traction and vision are part of that. The E-Myth Revisited, this really is a book about, you know, process. And so documenting processes, which is really important. It's a book I've read and I recommend. a lot. So if you are a part of your team that works on building processes, I think that's a great book for you to read. Stephen Covey's just always great. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Just one of those books that I think every leader should have on their bookshelf. The Success Principles is another great book by Jack Canfield. And you may not know him by name, but he is one of the authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul books. So if you liked any of those books, those are Jack Canfield. And he does a lot of really good things around success. And then for those of you who just want to feel better about yourself, Brene Brown, anything that she does are on my favorites list. So again, those are just some books that I recommend for leaders. So if you want to connect with me, here is my email and my LinkedIn. Also, if you want to follow us on LinkedIn at .org Solutions, here are our LinkedIn.org.solutions and Facebook at .org Solutions. We have a lot on our website as well, and you can always go to our blog and sign up to be on our regular blog list. And if you are interested, we do have 2 upcoming webinars. February 16th, we're going to be talking about developing healthy business office fundraising department relationships. That actually is going to be a panel discussion again, as opposed to presentation like today. And then on March 16th, we'll be talking about aligning marketing and fundraising plans for maximum impact. So I would like to thank all of you for being with us today. We'll stay on the line for a couple more minutes here to see if you do have any questions. And have a great day.